This is Scott Becker with the Becker Business Minute Podcast and the Becker Private Equity Podcast. Here are stories that we're following today, February 7th, 2023. First, the markets today are mixed. The Nasdaq and the S&P slightly up today so far. The Dow slightly down, but neither finding a lot of direction. Still waiting on comments from Fed Chairman Powell. Second, the markets fell again yesterday. We saw yesterday, February 6th, the Nasdaq down 1%, the S&P down 0.61%. The Dow was also down. Third, Boeing indicates it's cutting 2,000 white-collar jobs. Again, most of these companies that hired so much the last couple of years are doing some job cuts, not huge job cuts, and we'll continue to watch these as we continue on. Fourth, Dell is cutting 6,600 jobs. That's approximately 5% of its workforce. And again, the 5% of its workforce is a relatively small amount compared to the cuts that we used to see. I mean, 5% of workforce really means a couple percent, maybe 3% that's normal attrition, and really a couple percent of real job cuts. Fifth, CVS is close to buying Oak Street Health for $10.5 billion. CVS-Aetna has now become the fifth largest company or so in America. ExxonMobil moved up to the fourth spot last year, United Healthcare fifth, CVS sixth. ExxonMobil was inflated based on just oil prices being so high last year. So expect this year, again, back to United and CVS-Aetna in that fourth or fifth spots. The largest company in America by revenue is Walmart, then Amazon, then Apple, then typically United and CVS Health. CVS is about $313 billion. We'll talk more about the CVS acquisition on a separate podcast shortly. Sixth, Bed Bath & Beyond stock trading like a penny stock, a meme stock. They're out raising $1 billion supposedly. We'll see if that's enough to help them survive and really thrive going forward. Their stock is up 92% yesterday, but it's back down 40 or 50% today. So sort of what a mess in general. Seventh, a great Wall Street article today on households burning through pandemic savings. It basically says that Goldman indicates that households have now eroded down or spent down 35% of their excess savings that they had picked up during the pandemic based on stimulus and other types of things, not going out as much, not traveling as much. They expect that to be spent down by 65% by the end of the year. They also expect that credit card debt will rise, home equity debt will rise, and overall that should leave the American consumer in a more precarious position. And that's a little bit challenging just because the American consumer is so important to overall the situation in sort of business and the economy of the United States. The consumer is just very, very important. Eighth, Treasury yields have started to rise again. The 1 year is almost close to 5% today. The 2 year is close to 4.5%, 4.425%. The 10 year about 3.56 to 3.6%. Again, becoming serious options for investors. Do you buy a rent producing property that nets 4 to 5%, or do you just buy a treasury with no risk that nets 5%? So becoming really interesting discussions about what to do with money as these treasury rates go up, creep up and up. Ninth, oil is approximately $76 a barrel. 10th, Bitcoin is back at approximately $23,000. 11th, Zoom reported earnings yesterday. Revenues for the quarter came in at about $301 million. That's way up from $222 million a year ago in the same quarter, the fourth quarter. The earnings per share were down significantly this year, year over year, and the stock dropped about 5% based on this news overall. 12th, a lot of great guests the last couple of days on the Becker's Healthcare podcast, on the Becker Private Equity and the Becker Business podcast. Just the Becker's Healthcare podcast ranked 12th today out of all Apple Business News podcasts. Thrilled about that. Also thrilled on the Becker Private Equity podcast to have a fascinating guest, Maxwell Nee, who spoke about wine and whiskey investing. A little more fun than the concept of wine and whiskey investing. Again, we thank you for listening to the Becker Business Minute podcast, the Becker Private Equity podcast. Subscribe to get all your business news in short, concise buckets to the Becker Business Minute podcast, the Becker Private Equity podcast. Thank you for listening to us today. Thank you very much.